I'm conscious we don't have you for the whole show, which is a great shame. But I did want to ask you one question about, you talk there about what the foundation is doing in countries like Syria and Afghanistan, and you talk about women's rights there. We work a lot in football, and I really wrestle with the beauty of the game, and I love the game, and I know you do too, and a massive Norwich fan, East Anglia's second team behind Cambridge United. But I talked a lot about human rights issues in Saudi Arabia once Newcastle United were bought, and learnt lots more about it myself. And it isn't all on Jordan Henderson, right? But he was such a great ally to the LGBTQ plus community. I'm just really interested in how you feel about that move and about what is happening and how little people talk about the human rights. Eventually, people just talk about the money and the football.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always hesitant to criticise an individual, but I'm certainly willing to say that I personally have been offered just stupid things like going to do an evening with comedy routines and things in hotels in Saudi Arabia and in Abu Dhabi and other places. And I had done it back in the early 90s. But since then, I've always thought that, no, I can't go to a country where I couldn't share the hotel bedroom with my husband, where I'm not welcome, where people like me are being tortured and put to death in some instances, where it's all very well for those countries to say they won't be dictated to and given Western values, and well, fine, but then I won't be dictated to either, and being sort of made to pretend to respect something that I can't respect. The sports washing, I suppose, is the convenient phrase people use, whether you apply it to live golf or to what's happening in football at the moment, is, to me, deeply concerning, because part of what I love about Norwich City and what I'm sure you love about Cambridge United is its connection to where you live, where you grew up, with your friends, with your school, with your identity, if you like. And sport has a great part of that. It's not simply a bunch of franchises that you choose because you like those colours or that player is particularly wonderful. So now I'm going to support this team from Saudi Arabia because it's got Lionel Messi in it. That isn't, to me at least, that isn't what football means. Football is a tribal is the word often used, and for both good and ill, tribal. It forges strong identities and loyalties, but of course, yes, it can also erupt into unfortunate enmities and hooliganism, such as the kind I grew up with. Well, not personally, but we all saw on the news in those days.
We know you were an ultra, Stephen. We know you were there, snooker ball in a sock.
I'd leave a little visiting card on the bleeding ruin of someone who dared wear an Ipswich scarf. We
know there's a hard edge.
But no, that to me is the point, is that these sports, these games have a meaning which is deep and personal and communitarian, and a lot to do with how one grew up and what the team means to the place, what the French call terroir in food and wine, the belonging to a place that lends the real quality to the flavor and and so, yes, it's inevitable. I'm sure in 10 years' time, I'll listen back to this interview and think, oh, what a naive fool you were, Stephen. The Americanization of sports, however you want to look at it, it's happening in cricket to some extent. I mean, literally Americanization with MLC, which has started Major League Cricket in a few states around America. And I know for a fact that Saudi Arabia would love to get hold of a cricket franchise, to create one or to buy one and to control one. It's all part of their plan. I'm not calling it sinister, it's just sort of open plan. And I've heard people defending Saudi Arabia in this respect, in a sort of rather twisted way, which at least gives one pause. And what they say is, well, listen, if we don't encourage Saudi Arabia to face West and to involve themselves in our sports and games and our culture, and whether or not they're actually buying it or not, then what they'll do is just turn east, and they'll connect themselves more and more to Russia and China. And is that what we want? We want all that money and influence that they have to leak away to those who are perceived by some to be virtually our enemies. And that's all big geopolitics, and it's too much for me. But so I have to, sort of end where I began, and that is personally, I could never involve myself with those countries and the offers they make and the money they dangle, tempting as it might be. I can't speak for Jordan Henderson, a wonderful man, and always admired and liked him. And who knows what his family pressures are and what his thoughts are, because one thing I'll not have is that particular pressure that all sporting people have, which is that their time in the sun is very short. They can't guarantee they're going to have managerial or broadcasting careers after their brief moment in the sun. And they have to think of their families and their future. And it's not for me to boss them about. It's nothing less attractive than that. But I can speak for myself, I suppose.
Paul says, intellectual, thought-provoking, thoroughly interesting piece. 3 things I never thought I'd mention in a sentence about Max and Charlie's show. So, Stephen, thanks
been wonderful.
Thanks
Thank
so
you so
much
much
for coming on. Appreciate your time.
A real pleasure. All the very best. I hope there hasn't been another wicket. I shall go and find out.
You're all good. 90 for 1.